Okay. Hi, my name is Maureen Strickland. I'm the Social Enterprise Development Specialist here at Social Enterprise and Entrepreneurship, the One Social Enterprise Partnership. Welcome to the first of our webinars. We're delivering 9 this week on various aspects of social enterprise. Today I have with me as well Zach Lowe. He's a research assistant here at the Social Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Partnership, and he's going to be moderating the questions. In terms of the questions, we have put you all on mute. If you have a question, if you could type it into the chat box, Zach would be moderating that. And we'll have 2 opportunities to look at those questions. The first will be after we show some examples of social enterprises in Northern Ontario. And the second chance will be at the end of the webinar. So I'm expecting the webinar to last about 30 minutes, depending on how many questions we have. It could go a bit longer. So I'm going to launch into the topic for today, which is Social Enterprise 101, an introduction to social enterprise in the Northern Ontario context. So what we're going to cover today is give you an overview of what the Social Enterprise Northern Regional Partnership is. We're going to talk about what is a social enterprise. I'm going to go through some Northern Ontario examples, briefly talk about keys to success and business forms. Now these 2 topics will be expanded on in other webinars through the week. As well, I'm going to point you in the direction of where you can gather further support for the development of social enterprise and talk about other upcoming workshops and opportunities that the SE partnership will be having over the next few months. So, what is the Northern Regional Partnership? It is led by the Nordic Institute here at Algoma University, and it's affiliated with the Community Economic and Social Development Program here at Algoma University. The One Partnership is made up of the Small Business Regional Enterprise Centers in the north, the Regional Innovation Centers, as well as the Campus Linked Accelerators. So our partners here are the Timmins Small Business Enterprise Center, as well as the Northwest Innovation Center. They represent the SPEC and the RIC. And we also are in partnership with ULaunch, which is based out of the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. And another partner we have is the not-for-profit Perro Center for Women's Enterprise up in Thunder Bay. Now the partnership itself is funded by the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development and Growth. And the purpose of the partnership is to help develop social enterprise support in all of the regional business centers in the north so that a social entrepreneur could walk into an SPEC, could walk into their innovation center, could walk into their campus linked accelerator and receive support in developing their social enterprise. So the webinars that we're offering this week are focused on 2 main client groups. One is the social entrepreneur, and the other one is anybody out there who does business support with entrepreneurs. So we're also hoping that there's some economic development officers taking the webinars, as well as other community economic development and business support people who are outside of the One Partners. So our service area for this One Partnership stretches from Parry Sound to the Manitoba border, up to the James Bay coast. So it's a very large area, and that's why we're building the capacity of the regional business centers so that wherever you live in Northern Ontario, you'll be able to go to them for assistance. So that is a summary of the project. So getting down to the Social Enterprise 101 aspect of this presentation. What is a social enterprise? Social, as you can see on your slide, social enterprises have a mission to address social, environmental, economic, or cultural challenges by reinvesting profits above their operational expenses back into their mission, and they use a triple bottom line to measure their success. Social enterprise itself is not a business form. They need to take other forms of business, such as nonprofits, cooperatives, sole proprietorships. We'll get into more of that in a moment. But I think what you need to take away from this, there's 2 words here. There's social and there's enterprise. So an enterprise is like any other business. It has to be a viable business, but the motivation for starting that business was to address a community need, a community challenge. And the entrepreneur here, by having a viable business addressing that mission, they're able to make an impact on that mission that they were passionate about addressing. They make that impact by reinvesting their profits above their operational expenses. So they need to be successful so they can grow, have profits, stay open so they can make their impact. And they also measure that impact to help show that they are meeting that initial mission that they wanted to address. So I think that's a really key message here. It has to be a viable business, and it's addressing some type of community need. So how can social enterprises help Northern Ontario? You know, Northern Ontario is large. It's largely rural, largely rural. Over the past decade, public money has shrunk. Private money has shrunk. Baby boomers are retiring. So businesses are leaving communities. Banks are leaving communities. So social entrepreneurship is a way to address community needs. And we'll show some examples in a minute. So developed to meet a community need, and typically because they're meeting a community need, they're contributing to that local economy, either by purchasing things for their business in the local economy, hiring local people. Depending on the type of social enterprise, yes, they can be started with little capital, but you still need to know what capital you need to start a business. And some social enterprises do need, more, they need more capital than little capital to get going. There's a subset of social enterprises called employment social enterprises that are specifically designed to meet a community need. Let's say a town needs a bakery, but they make it their social mission to hire people who might be underemployed, need some help getting back into the workforce, and hire those people to work in that business. And that is typically called an employment social enterprise. The other key part of helping Northern Ontario, how can they help Northern Ontario? Money is circulated in the local economy typically, rather than a business that maybe hires people locally, but they do all their procurement outside of the region, that type of thing. There's a kind of a type of social enterprise where a nonprofit is now looking at a revenue stream to help assist generating funds for their not-for-profit. That's a bit tricky, and we'll get to a bit more of that in a moment. You can be a nonprofit. Doesn't mean to say you don't make any money. You still have to have a viable business, but your profits are going back to achieving your social mission. And if you're a nonprofit looking at social enterprise as a way to become self-sustaining, you really need to understand that you have to have a viable business plan and basic business feasibility work done to see if that transition is going to work. And the other thing is that social enterprises don't just track their finances, they also track their social return on investment. So they track their impact. And one of the webinars later this week talks about how you can build a tracking system from the get-go so that you can start to track your impact right away, and why that's important, how you can use that both for telling your story, but also ways to market yourself. So I'm going to go through some examples in Northern Ontario, and then we're going to have a break after that to see if there's any questions at this point. Okay, so my first example here is the Great Spirit Circle Trail on Manitoulin Island. On Manitoulin Island, the First Nations have created a cultural tourism partnership composed of First Nations sole proprietors and other small businesses to offer tourists an eco kind of tourism experience to build understanding around indigenous people and the outdoors, bringing all that together in Manitoulin. So you could go and through them, I know people who've taken horseback riding through the Great Spirit Circle Trail, where they've learned about different type of cultural activities at the end of the horseback riding. So they learned about smudging and those types of things. So the Great Spirit Circle Trail offers that type of ecotourism opportunities. And of course, that boosts both the businesses and sole proprietors that are involved in it, but it also builds that understanding. So the social mission is the understanding. The business side is it's an ecotourism, it's an experiential tourism business. The next one is La Maison Verte Co-op up in Hearst. So this was started 30 years ago by a group of women who were facing challenges accessing the workplace. So think of this as a little bit as the employment social enterprise, but it was also formed as a cooperative. Now, all social enterprises aren't co-ops, but most co-ops are social enterprises. And cooperatives are member-owned business. So this is a great story. They started out 30 years ago because the forestry business needed tree seedlings for reforestation. And then they actually diversified as well as scaled up into different product lines as the need for the seedlings decreased, but the interest in local food grew, and they had all these greenhouses. So they started to produce greenhouse fruits and vegetables that they sell at their own store, as well as through some of the local stores in the region. So that's a great example and a very successful long-term example. The next one is the Moonbeam Community Co-op Grocery Store. This is another excellent example. As you're aware, baby boomers across Canada are retiring. A lot of these baby boomers are the people in your towns who run the small businesses. They own the hardware store, they own the grocery store, they own the gas bar, and there's not an entrepreneur there who wants to take on that business. But it's a very crucial element of keeping these small towns viable. So up in Moonbeam, which is a small community about 30 kilometers east of Kapuskasing, the sole proprietor, he'd been there for years. He was, I think, 65. He wanted to retire. But that community really knew they wanted to keep that grocery store, not just for themselves, but they're very close to some provincial parks. So the people that would come to those parks in the summer wanted the local grocery store that they could buy from. So the community members purchased the Moonbeam grocery store as a cooperative. They raised $330,000 through community bonds to buy the business, and they've maintained that store as a cooperative. It's been a going concern. They have over $1 million turnover in sales every year. They employ, at any given time, 8 community members in the store. And they also circulate anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000 of their annual budget in the town of Moonbeam. The other thing that they've done is they recognize that there's a niche market around local food. So they developed the butchery side of the business, and now people come from Kapuskasing to buy their meat at Moonbeam because they can get special cuts, know where the food came from or the meat came from, etc. So it's a great story, but it's also a really great idea. So when you're looking around your community and you see somebody wanting to get out of a critical business in your town, think about this idea of a co-op conversion. The last one we're going to talk about is a sole proprietorship. It's called Trailblazing Beads. It's here in Sault Ste. Marie. And this is owned by an Indigenous woman who has a background in mental health work and child welfare. And what she wanted to do is look at connecting Indigenous people to their culture through beading. So, and doing this as a tool for healing from colonization. So she has a beading shop where she sells the beads, and she also teaches beading. So here, social mission is around connecting people back to their culture And the enterprise aspect is selling the beads. So you can see how those two come together here. And it's an example of a sole proprietorship, social enterprise. So I'm going to stop there and see if Zach has any questions for me. No? Okay. Okay, so we will forge along. We're halfway through at 12:15. Okay, so what are the keys to success? And all of these keys to success are going to be covered in the subsequent webinars that we're offering this week. The one just after this is around taking your idea to a go, no-go decision, which really stems on doing a proper business feasibility study. So we're going to go into that in detail in the next webinar. Another key to success is looking at how you're going to track your social mission. When I say social mission, obviously, as I said, could be cultural, economic, environment, but looking at ways you're going to track that, because by tracking it, you can show that you're making that impact, not just for yourself, you know you're doing what you set out to do, but for your community. You can tell your story, it can help with your marketing, it can also help you decide if and when it's time to scale up. Another key element of success is the governance, particularly if you're a not-for-profit or a cooperative social enterprise. You really need to think about who is on that board that's going to be part of your startup or a scale-up. And that topic is covered later this week during both the go, no-go session in about an hour, but also in the scale-up session tomorrow. Another very important element is capitalization. You might have a great idea, you've done your business plan, but you have the money to get your social enterprise off the ground. So the first thing there is to figure out how much money you need, and then the second thing is to see where you're going to get it from. And that's touched on as well in the startup and scale up webinars. And then ongoing business support. To be successful in a social enterprise, you're going to very likely need forms of business support. So you can go to your local business support services in your community. But also, we have a web page with lots of resources on social enterprise, and we have a webinar on Thursday walking you through that web page. So those are some overviews of keys to success here. And I think what you'll see is that, again, it's not just about the mission. The mission's driving you, but you have to go through the steps of any entrepreneur to make sure that your social enterprise idea is a viable business. And if you do it right, then you're going to be able to open a viable business and keep your business open and doing business, which is going to increase the social impact of your business. So how do social enterprises fit into the economy? As I mentioned, you can't go in and register as a social enterprise. It is not a business form. You have to decide if you're going to be a not-for-profit, a cooperative, a sole proprietor, a limited partnership, even a corporation. And we will be delving into that further in this afternoon's webinar. But I think the key takeaway from this slide is that a social enterprise is profiting from the sale or service of a product, but they are reinvesting that profit back into their enterprise, back into their communities to achieve the social mission that got them to start the business in the first place. Whereas with a mission-driven business, they may have corporate social responsibility goals and aspirations, but they are still existing to make money for their shareholders. They're not investing the profit back into the mission. For-profit business, it's about making money, and that's fine. But it is not a social enterprise, and not-for-profit organizations, they've been designed to assist a community or a group of people. They may rely on charitable funds. They are not selling a product or service to keep their to operate their not-for-profit. So you know, when you start thinking through an idea, it might be that it turns out you're not a social enterprise, that you're one of these other things. And I think some of the webinars this week will help you decide that. So where can you go for business support for your burgeoning social enterprise idea? As I said, go to your Small Business Enterprise Center. They're throughout Northern Ontario. Go to your Regional Innovation Center. Again, we have them in North Bay, Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, Thunder Bay. If your idea maybe falls into the agriculture realm, you might want to go and talk to your OMAFRA rep. You know, certainly the idea of social enterprise has spread throughout the North, and not just these business support agencies have information on that. You could also go to your Community Futures Development Corporation. You could go to the economic development officer in your community, and, you know, seek out their assistance, because that type of business support is going to help you make sure that your social enterprise is viable. I'm just going to briefly talk about 3 funding options in Northern Ontario specifically for social enterprise. Wabatek Business Development Corporation does have a social enterprise demonstration fund stream. Now that is specifically for First Nations social entrepreneurs who live within the Wabatek catchment area, which is quite wide but doesn't cover all of Northern Ontario. There's also Social Enterprise for Northern Ontario CINO grants and loans offered through PERO. PERO is up in Thunder Bay, but they operate throughout the Northern Ontario region that C operates. And this is specifically for social enterprise with loans up to 10,000, grants up to 5,000. The Fair Finance Fund is a social enterprise fund that's being launched. Actually, November 7th is the first day that people can apply for loans through this fund. It's the pilot phase. And these are specifically for food and farm social enterprises, and the loans are from 20 to 100,000 K. So that's an exciting initiative specifically for food and farm social enterprises in Northern Ontario, well, across Ontario, but it's going to be in Northern Ontario as well. In terms of what we have here at the Social Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Initiative, we have the website, www.seethechange.ca, giving a webinar that on Thursday. On that webpage, you will find links to many resources listed here, but also we're recording all of these webinars this week, and they will be uploaded to the webpage within 2 weeks. There's also worksheets associated with these webinars, not with this one, but with other ones, and you'll be able to download them off the webpage. So the content on the web page changes, but these are some of the things that we have links to now. Checklists for helping you decide if you're a social entrepreneur, workbooks on various aspects of social entrepreneurship. Upcoming opportunities. You would have seen the other 8 webinars advertised when you registered for this one. So certainly if anything else strikes you as interesting, please do register. Or if you can't attend live, it will be on our webpage. We're going to be holding regional roundtables on this topic. The Northwest will be in Kenora, January 23rd, 25th of 2019. And the Northeast Roundtable will be in Timmins at the end of February, February 27th, 28th, 2019. And here we'll bring together specialists in social enterprise. There'll be workshops, opportunities for networking with fellow entrepreneurs as well as business support people. And we're also working on developing peer mentoring for social entrepreneurs. We're looking for people who would like to be a mentor, and we're also encouraging groups of social entrepreneurs in their communities to form mutually supportive peer mentoring circles around social entrepreneurship. And we'll have a webinar on how to go about creating these circles this Thursday. So that summarizes this quick overview of social entrepreneurship, Social Enterprise 101. We do have a short survey that you should be able to access through the link on this slide. And if not, you can also go to the webpage and get the link from there. It's open until March 15th, 2019. But I will see now if there's any questions, any new questions from Zach.
Yeah, Ryan has a couple questions. His first is, wanted to hear your thoughts on co-ops as a social enterprise, and he's wondering if fundamentally should they not be social enterprises?
Okay, so thoughts on co-ops as social enterprises, and
fundamentally should they be?
Oh, should every co-op be considered a social enterprise? I would say yes, but I've heard people argue that that's not the case. But I actually myself believe that all co-ops are social enterprises because they're democratic. They're a democratically owned form of business. They always are formed to meet a need that is being unmet in a community. They can be member-owned, they can be producer-owned, or they could be worker co-ops. And in every case that I've seen, there's always been some social need being met there. Like worker co-ops form because the workers want to have a job and be in control of their own business, which I think is a social mission in itself. Producers often get together to form co-ops to work together democratically to sell their product. You'll often see that with food co-ops. And consumer-based co-ops often come together to purchase goods that they're not seeing in mainstream private business. So my opinion is that all co-ops are social enterprises, but I have heard arguments that there are the odd co-op that isn't. And kind of like, I think it's, I could be wrong, but it's like Barcelona Football Club, or it's one of these big football clubs that is a co-op. Maybe that's not a social enterprise, but maybe it is. We don't know what they're doing. They might be taking their profits and using it to encourage at-risk youth to form community and learn social skills through playing football. So sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to find out what the social mission is for some social enterprises. So I hope that answers your question. And one point I'd like to make about co-ops is, as of today, in fact, co-ops can now incorporate through Service Ontario. That has been something that the co-op sector in Ontario has been lobbying the government for years, and it's finally happened, because before it had a very onerous corporation. They couldn't just do it through Service Ontario the way all the other forms of business can.
All right. And Ryan's second question is, where's the line to divide between a business corporation and a social enterprise in terms of how our business is not just paying lip service, that they are a social enterprise?
Right. Okay. This is that's a good question, Ryan. So the question is, how can you determine if a business is just playing lip service, that they're not really a social enterprise? Well, I think this comes down to the impact tracking. And I think that's why it's very important for businesses that are pitching themselves as social enterprises that they do track their impact, because that validates the fact that they are committed to achieving that social mission. The other way it can be determined is to, and this, for the person walking down the street, somebody's advertising themselves as a social enterprise. There's not that many ways to parse out if they really are one or not. But if you're a funder, for instance, and you are looking at their, they need capital, you're looking at their application, be it for a grant or a loan, then you can look at their financial statements and see how they are reinvesting those profits back into achieving the mission. So that, and obviously the average person on the street can't ask the business owner for their financial statements, but certainly somebody who's looking at lending them or giving them money can, and that's another way of defining that, if they really are a social enterprise. So I think those are the two, their financials, what are they doing with that extra profit, and how they're tracking their social impact.
Great. Natasha wants to know, are the SE101 funds and grants for anything specifically?
The SENO, so Social Enterprise Northern Ontario funds and grants are for social entrepreneurs in Northern Ontario. I believe, well, you'd have to ask Pero, contact Pero, but I believe the funds can be used for working capital, equipment, scaling up. There might be somebody on the call who know, or on the webinar who maybe has a better answer to this question. Maybe we could type in Pero's webpage. I think it's www.pero.ca for you to contact them directly. And Pero itself is known for their work with women entrepreneurs, but the Social Enterprise Northern Ontario Fund is for everybody, both men and women, just so that's clarified.
And Ryan has posted that link for Pero.
Okay, great.
Amanda wants to know, what would happen if a social enterprise received funding or grant and changed to just a business corporation? Is there a policy to ensure that a social enterprise remains a social enterprise?
I can't answer that because that would be something that the social enterprise would have to determine and work with the person that's lending the money. So if they were borrowing money from SENO, they would need to address that with them. If they were borrowing money from their Community Futures Development Corporation, they would need to address that with them. So I can't. That's something you would work out with your lender. Okay. Any more questions? So I put up the last card here in case there's any more questions that pop through. This is how you would get a hold of us. If you want to follow up specifically, info@seethechange.ca. I also encourage you, oh, we have another question.
Yeah. Ian wants to know, do social enterprises have any additional reporting requirements?
That would be, okay. So if you were to start a social enterprise on your own with your own capital, you just get on with business, you're tracking your impact, you're managing your finances like you would for a successful business, you don't need to report to anybody. But if you were to, for instance, potentially borrow money from a fund that is specifically lending money to social entrepreneurs, for instance, this new Fair Finance Fund, that fund has they've identified 4 key indicators that they want people to track. 3 of them are related to job creation in the local economy, and the 4th one is an environmental tracking of the business's choice. So in general, if you're not getting any money from somebody, you're just getting on with things, you don't need to report anything to anyone. But if you are borrowing money or getting grants that are linked to tracking, yes, you would. Okay, that sounds like it's all the questions. So yeah, so I encourage you to go to our webpage, email us if you have any questions, and certainly I hope that you are able to attend some of the webinars that are happening later this week. Thank you very much.